Hello, and welcome to the ARC podcast. I am here with a good friend of mine, somebody I'm so excited that I finally wrangled her to get on the podcast with me. Um, it is Sara Bitter. I wanted Sara to come on the podcast today because I am doing this series of podcasts on education. And I'm getting a lot of calls from families who I've worked with when their kids' IEP meetings and calls that I've never even met these people. And they're scared about the cuts to the Department of Education and what does that mean for our kids. And I actually just got off of a national call with our National Down Syndrome Congress. And the cuts are worse than I think people realize, but I also think this just really helps us be laser focused here in Ohio, which is what I want to focus on, and what we can do as advocates, as parents, as professionals to ensure that our kids with disabilities are getting the education that they have the right to get. And I want Ohio to be somewhere where I can tell people honestly, you can move here if your child has a disability and you're going to be okay, and you don't have to move to certain places. You can move to Ohio and your child can get a good education. I want that. That's like top tier to me. So I'm just excited for Sara to be here. Sara, can you introduce yourself and tell us about yourself? Most important to me, your kids and your profession and what you're doing right now.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jen, for having me. I am Sara Bitter, and I am a mother of two young men. Actually, one is still a child. I have a 20-year-old who is going to be, who is at a transition program in our high school. And I have a 15-year-old son who, although he's taller than me, he's still a child, so I have to remember that. Um, he is a freshman in high school. I am also an attorney and I represent children in education cases, mostly special education and some school discipline cases. And I am an advocate for children and adults with developmental disabilities and other different types of disabilities. And I'm really passionate about the work that I do as a school board member as well. I'm an elected official in my local school board.
Yes, and that's why I wanted you to come on today. So I'm thrilled that you're doing all of that great work. And I'm glad your kids are doing good. You know that Jack is in a freshman this year too. And it's just wild because we've known each other for a while and our kids were like little playing together on the swings. And now they're both like men that are bigger than us. And you're tall. So like the fact that both your kids are bigger and Jack is like just, I think he just reached 6 foot. So yeah. Wild times. But I really wanted you here because you just got elected again to your school board. And I want to ask you, why did you run in the first place? And then why did you run again? I want two answers to that. The first time you ran and you just did it
Good
again.
questions. Yes, I did. I I decided to back up to answer your question. I feel like I need to give you a little bit of an introduction before I tell you why I ran. After I had both of my children, I had not had a lot of experience in anything related to disability. And while I was raising my children, trying to take them to different doctor's appointments and therapy appointments and helping them in school get what they needed, and just going out into the world and trying to travel and do other things with them, I decided that I wanted to try to advocate more for kids and adults with disabilities. And through that process, as an attorney, I started becoming more of an advocate. I would go to Washington, D.C. to advocate for people with disabilities, sometimes specific for the disability that my children have, sometimes for the larger group. I've done a lot of advocacy generally wherever I possibly could for my kids and for other children and adults with disabilities. And I decided to run for the school board because I wanted to make sure that our local school district had the voice of parents that have disabilities on the school board. As an attorney, I felt like I could bring that skill set. That was something that I could offer my community as a service to the board as a perspective. But I thought that the more important perspective to provide would be being a parent of two kids that have IEPs, that have anxiety, have challenges in school. I thought that that would be a good offering, I guess. So that's why I put myself out there to begin with. And then that was why I ran. And I decided to run for reelection for the board because, and I obviously I won. And so I've been on there for 4 years. And I decided to run for reelection because, first of all, it does take quite some time to learn how to be on a board. It's a pretty steep learning curve. And I do feel like I did it. I felt like I did a pretty good job and I brought a very important perspective. Being on a school board, not most of what you're doing isn't related necessarily to special education or disability, but bringing that perspective, you always have that perspective. um, but running for reelection to me felt like the right choice because I learned so much in the last 4 years, and I feel like I can do an even better job serving kids and making sure all learners get the best education possible. So that's why I decided to run one more time, and I was reelected, and I'm very thankful to have the support of my community, and I will continue hopefully to keep even pushing forward and doing good work for our community. That's my priority.
I know. I'm so thrilled that you're there. Just for your perspective, and also just you're such a great leader and someone that should be, the president of your board, like making the decisions, kind of calling everybody to the most important priorities in a school.
Yeah.
So, break it down. Tell us what it takes to become a school board member here in
Mm-hmm.
Ohio. Like, break it down to like how many signatures did you need? Or is that by
Mm-hmm.
local school district or is that by Ohio law? Like, give us
Yeah.
some how-tos.
Yeah. So the way to run for local office is to go, usually you go to your board of elections. So it can be the Ohio Board of Elections website. There's that. And then you also have local, depending on what county you live in, you can go to your county board of elections website. And you actually, I'm in Hamilton County, so I had to go to I went to their office. I sat down and they actually give you a packet of information. They sit with you and they tell you what you need to do and how many signatures you need to get in order to get yourself on the ballot. So that's the first step. And you have to have so many signatures from people who live in your community. Mine, I think the amount, is like 75 or 80. And then I tried to get double that. And I could be wrong on the numbers, but it was something around 150 or 200 signatures that I ended up getting. And they have to be people who are registered to vote, they live in your community, and it has to be a signatures. There's very specific rules. And then once you get yourself on the ballot, you start running your race. And there are organizations, there are groups, there are people who do trainings on how to run for school board. Even there's something called the Ohio School Board Association, and I believe they offer some trainings, or at least they tell you how to get training, and they may even provide you some guidance on like what makes a good school board member. What are some things you should talk about if you're going to run? But ultimately, It is running a campaign. It's a political campaign. These are nonpartisan races. You don't have to run as a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. You just can run. But there are some resources out there for how to do it. But your first place to start is with your local board of elections in your county. That's the best, I would say, the best way to go about that.
Okay. And then how do you find out who else is running or whose terms are up or when you can
The
run?
way Yeah, so every depending on how large, every school district is different.
Yeah.
There are in Ohio, I believe, approximately 600 or more school districts. There are a lot of public schools in Ohio, and every district is different. Like my school board has 5 board members, and they're staggered. The elections are in they're staggered terms. So a school board term is 4 years, and 3 seats were up for this election in November. And then 2 years from now, 2 seats will be up, and then they just alternate. So we, and then a larger city will have more than five. They'll have, I don't know what the number is, let's say 10, but they
Yeah.
have a larger number. And I don't think there's less than five though. So you find out who's going to be on the ballot Well, first of all, you know who's in there and your school board by looking at your website and seeing who's on your local school board. Um, you can go to school board meetings and sit there and watch them. They are public meetings, so you should be able to go and actually watch the meetings. They should be publicly listed. Your agendas should be public. Your meeting minutes will be public. But you can go and just watch. You have the right to do that. But you'll find out who's going to be on the ballot because there will be a deadline that says, let's say August 3rd of the election year. Everyone who wants to run has to have their signatures in, and then there's a cutoff time. And then you can go to the Board of Elections. They have lists of who has filed enough petitions, that's what they're called, to get on the ballot. And that's how you'll know. So if you have 3 seats, like in my instance, we had 3 seats and there were 6 people that decided to run. So those 6 people were on the ballot, so to speak. So in November, they were on the ballot. When I ran the first time, I believe there were 7 people on the ballot for 3 seats. So that's how basically just through your Board of Elections.
Yeah. Did you go to a lot of board meetings before you were on the board? Would you advise someone who is thinking about it to like become a regular at your board meetings or even talk to the board members who are currently on
Yeah.
and ask them questions?
Yeah, so I would say if you're thinking about running for a local office, I would definitely think about talking with people who are on the board, talk with community members. You don't have to physically go to board meet. Well, it depends on your district. Some board meetings are online, so you can watch them online. Sometimes, obviously they're in person as well. So going to the meetings is very, very helpful thing to do to see if it's something that you feel like it would be something you would feel comfortable doing. So yes, I would go to meetings. I would watch meetings. Um, you can go and you can even, if you have something that you want to say, usually there's public participation, so you can go speak at meetings, and that's what I had done in the past. If you have an interest in the school board, definitely going to a school board meeting is very, very helpful. Pay attention to what your school board is doing, and then see if it's something that's the right fit for you.
Let's say we just had an election, so it's going to be a little while, for some school board, some districts might have one next year, then the year after, but what else could a parent do if they're like, the school board's probably not for me, that's probably not my skill set? Do you have any suggestions? I want them to feel like they can do something to get in there and advocate because I want parents. It's kind of like we're going back to where parents and people with disabilities really have to show up and really have to advocate. We cannot sit on our heels and hope that the IDEA is going to work. And there's no oversight right now, and we might not have that oversight in the future. And I'm not sure if Ohio's ready or not for this. So I just really want us to fall
Yeah.
back on ourselves as parents and people with disabilities to pay close attention. So what other roles could you take on? Any advice?
Yeah, so first of all, I will say that the laws are still there. Like, even
Yes.
if the Department of Education goes away, the laws are still there. So, school districts must follow the law. And this is a good question because what can we do as family members? What can we do as parents? What can we do as advocates? We can go to board meetings and watch and listen. We can read. You're going to have an agenda beforehand. You're going to get to see what the agenda is. You'll be able to see what the board is going to be doing that evening, what they're going to be voting on. So if you notice something on the agenda on a particular evening and you feel like it's important, you may want to go to the meeting. At the meeting itself, most boards of election will allow you a certain amount of time. Like in our school district, it's 3 minutes and you can speak. It's called public participation. You can't necessarily ask questions. You're not going to get any feedback necessarily, but you could speak, and you can speak for 3 minutes and say that how important it is that your school district takes care of all of its students and follows the rules and the laws. And even though the Department of Education is being taken away, you care deeply about these students, and you're a voter and you're a community member and you're a parent. And we hope you board will pay attention to this and know that it's valuable to me and to my family. I mean, you could say that and everyone could do that.
Mhm.
And that will make an impact on your school board because they'll hear you. You are a voter, you are a community member, and people don't get elected for the board potentially in your own school district if they don't care about these issues. So that's one thing you can do. Um, You can also, yes, you can run for school board. You could say, I'm going to run for school board and bring my voice to the table, right? That could be an idea. You could create, you could join a PTO or create PTO groups of other parents in your or advocacy or resource groups within your own community or in your own school district with other parents to inform yourselves on what's happening and then be a voice to the school district and to the board, right? Or to the administration. You could set up a meeting with your superintendent or your treasurer and say, hey, I just want to know like what's happening here
Yep.
with our budget for our students with disabilities. Like, do you see any impacts? And you could ask them to present on it at the board meeting. Like, I want to know, or email you, or call you, or sit with you for coffee and tell you. You have that. You can do that. You have access to the public, to the public system where your children go to school, and you can definitely make those kinds of calls and ask those questions.
Yeah. I will say, like, once I heard that these cuts were coming down, these cuts have been going on all year, but the last ones were pretty substantial reduction in force, not like furloughs because of the shutdown, like firing of people at the Department of Education that work in the special education programming that provides a lot of oversight for the IDEA. And once I heard about it, I was like, okay, I do this for a living. Like I go to IEP meetings, I help other kids. But I was also like, of course, selfishly, oh, what's going on in my own district? And if Ohio's not ready, I just got to make sure my district is doing the right thing. So I just real quick got on and like looked at our district scores, because I was like, where are we in special education? And I just realized, and these are scores from like this year, but they looked back at 2023, 2022, and
Mm-hmm.
2023, and we were not meeting a few areas. And so I myself um, requested a meeting with our special education, pupil services director, and we're meeting tomorrow. I'm going to ask a lot of
Mm-hmm.
questions, and she's happy to meet, and she
Right.
knows that I like to
Yeah.
meet, and I
Yeah.
want those answers,
Absolutely.
and if I
Yeah.
am not happy with some of the answers, then I fully intend to go to my school board and say, hey, what are we doing about this? Because I
Mm-hmm.
know for a fact that we're not going to be audited by the Department of Education anytime soon. So who's the oversight? I feel like I am.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like it's
And one
important.
thing, and another thing just to remember, the Board of Education sets the vision for the entire school district. And so the Board of Education hires the superintendent who
Yes.
runs the day-to-day and the operations of the whole entire school district. And they also hire the treasurer who handles all the finances. And then they then, of course, manage every single, every administrator, every principal, every teacher. They administer that, not the board. The board only really oversees specifically or works directly with two people. That's the treasurer and the superintendent. But the board sets the vision. And then once the board sets that vision, that's how the administration should be running the district. So if you're talking with board members and finding out, hey, are you planning on, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to follow the rules? Are you going to follow the laws? Like, if you're
Yeah.
concerned about it, I mean, that's not really maybe the best way to ask it, but hey, just a friendly reminder that this is something that's very important to many members of this community. I'd like to know what your position on this. You can ask them, or at least let them know how you feel. Um, and that will kind of give you a feeling of what they know and what their priorities are as well. And then if you feel like the priorities aren't aligned, then you can go and speak clearly to your school board at a meeting and let them know how you feel.
Yeah.
But one thing to remember is, again, the laws aren't going away.
Yeah.
So if a school doesn't uphold the law, there are like legal and financial risks that could occur that would then harm the school district financially. So
Right.
it's in the best interest financially for the taxpayers and the school district to follow this follow the rules, right? Follow the laws, follow what you're supposed to do, even though the oversight entity, the oversight Department of Education may not have the same people there.
Mhm.
um, that doesn't mean that the district shouldn't do the right thing. And I hope and believe that they will. But it is up to us as community members. We are, the public. Like my boss is the public, right? My boss are the people who put me in there. That's my
Right.
boss. And then I am, let's say, the boss of the superintendent or the treasurer. And I'm putting these in very vague terms, but Like that's how it goes. The community determines how the district goes and what the district does. The
Right.
voters.
Right.
So the voters do that. So remember that as a constituent, as a person who has children in the school district, you decide how your district's going to go and how it's going to run. And you have to weigh in. And the way you weigh in, it doesn't have to be that you go and speak at a board meeting. You can write a letter. You can meet with someone for coffee. You can do it in a. You don't have to. Depending on your style and how you prefer to advocate. There are many ways to advocate. Um, that it is a very powerful and effective way to make sure your voice is heard, and potentially help a lot of students in your district.
Well, Sarah, I'm going to leave it there. I feel like that's, you just gave some really great advice. And I also agree with you that, we're not in a terrible place. We're in okay. And I also do still think that Ohio is a great place for children to get their education here. I just want us all to be like really paying attention. And I think
Yeah.
one of the ways you can really pay attention and lead, and like you said, create that vision. Who better to create a vision for a school than a parent of children with disabilities? You don't want it to be a parent who has no idea and has never met a person with a disability or hasn't, been around somebody with a disability, to be making those decisions, without that knowledge. So I just think I want to thank you for running and for doing the work because it's hard work. It's definitely not for the faint of heart, but it's just so important, and it's just part of like the public service that we need everybody to be a part of. So, any last words? Any more
Yeah.
encouragement?
The last words I will say, the Department of Education oversees generally compliance, right, for IDEA and other areas,
Mhm.
but they also do disperse money.
Yes.
And if money doesn't come to school districts, that is a separate, think of that almost as a separate subject. And what I would say is your school districts are going to need support in that instance.
Mhm.
So that would be where you, again, having a good relationship with your school district, being an ally with your superintendent and your treasurer and your school board members to say, you're supposed to receive this millions of dollars for IDEA, which was never fully funded properly anyhow. They aren't getting enough money for kids with disabilities. Just know that school districts do not get enough money
Yes.
to educate children with disabilities. They're not getting it. The federal government has never funded it properly.
Right.
So to get a cut of money or to not receive that money would make a huge dent on our schools.
Yes.
And we cannot allow that. So asking your school, what can we do to help advocate for our schools? What can we do?
Yeah.
Well, how can we help? That would be a good thing to do as well. To just remember we're part of this team together, and everybody, schools don't want to, and it's not just special ed that the Department of Ed gives money for, it's also for children who receive money or the ability to get free and reduced lunch or breakfast, right? It's also food. So we don't want to see our schools and our children not get what they need. So that's think of it in that regard too. So if you start hearing that, that's where we all need to be calling probably our local representatives, our Congress people, right? Our congressmen and women and our
And where,
senators to tell them
yeah.
that this is not okay on a federal side. This
Yeah.
is not
How
okay.
would
We need
we
money.
how would we know? Because I feel like, yes, like the IDEA has never been fully funded. We were meant to get like 40% of the funding in the IDEA, from the federal, and it's never even come close, to what
Right,
the federal is supposed to give. The state
right.
has to provide. And how are we going to know from like the financial piece of like a school board meeting, or will there be like information that comes out from
It'll be you'll hear about it in the school board meeting. So
yeah,
that's where that is why if you connect with your school board, if you watch the school board meetings or you go to them or you read their budgets or you listen to the meetings, when you start hearing you'll hear sometimes even in social media, I've heard local school districts sometimes say, because it happened over the summer, money wasn't coming out that was needed for after school programs,
yep,
I think, or for other programs. And the superintendent of the school would actually say, okay, everybody in the community, please reach out to your federal, your federal elected official, which
Yeah.
would be your senators and your congresspeople. So you have to kind of pay attention now because schools really are going to start signaling. And by the way, it's not just going to be Department of Ed. Unfortunately, in the state of Ohio, it's also going to be changes of, there are vouchers that are taking money out of the federal, or excuse me, out of our funds. There
Yep.
are potentially taking away property taxes will make a huge impact on a lot of school districts. There's all kinds of other issues, and I'm not trying to overwhelm you, but now is a very, very important time for people who have uh, kids who are very vulnerable, and that can be for many reasons, not just disability, but for any reason. If your child is vulnerable, you want to pay attention to your school boards right now,
Yeah.
and you want to stay involved because we have the ability to, as voters, connect with different people. Schools are going to reach out too. They're going to reach out through the Ohio School Board Association. They're going to reach out through their own like superintendents networks or treasurers networks, and believe me, they are doing it. And it's also going to be schools working together with like the police and the fire and the
Yeah.
townships and the cities. But as parents of kids with disabilities, we know what happens when funds are cut. We are going to be disproportionately negatively impacted by
Sure.
cuts. So we might be the ones that need to let people know even more often. Pay
Thank
attention.
you, Sarah. Thank you so much for educating us, and you're an inspiration for other families to,
Oh, thank
you
you.
know, I just feel really glad that you're there. I want to make sure that my school board and my kids are okay and so like I educate my school board members and I show up. But
Mhm.
I think in being in a leadership role, it's just really important. So please, guys, run for school board. This is important. And
Yeah.
if you're thinking about it, or if you've ever thought about it, now's the time to do it. So thank you so much,
Yeah.
Sarah.
Thank you.
Take
Take
care.
care.